How can we, as American yogis, raise consciousness in our country? Yeah, needed very much, not only in America, but all over the world. How can we raise consciousness? Well, the only way to do it is to raise your own consciousness. Sadly, there's no magic wand that we can take and wave it over people's heads and raise their consciousness. The gurus can do that. That's why we travel thousands and thousands of miles to come and sit at the feet of the guru. But when we don't have that power, what can the rest of us do? Well, we raise our own consciousness. And what happens when we do that is that we literally, energetically, become different. And what that does is it literally and energetically changes the people around us. We all know that we receive people's energy. This is where people will say things like, I just got a really bad feeling around that person. Or, God, I got such an amazing feeling around that person. People talk about good vibes and bad vibes. It's sort of a new agey way of referring to this. But it's really just energy. There's now incredible science that is showing what the sages and saints and rishis have said for thousands of years, which is what you think, you emanate. You actually send it off into the world. So we literally, what we are thinking doesn't just stay in our brains. There's now incredible science showing that there are machines that can give you a brain scan without touching your head. Now this is amazing when you think about it. We've all seen, either in real life or on TV or in the movies, images of what brain scans look like. They hook up a machine to your head, and then on a screen, on a monitor, on a machine, you get a reading. They now have a machine that can do that inches away from your head. The implications of this are huge. What it means is that literally what we are thinking, what we are feeling, is going out into the world in a strong and exact way, such that a machine, not your loved one, not your spouse or your kids or your friends who say, are you sure nothing's wrong? You sure you're not sad? But a machine that doesn't even know you, can pick up your brainwaves. So we should not underestimate the power of raising our own consciousness. One of the tragic mistakes that so many of us make is to take on what feels like a really noble mission to change other people. And typically we like to start with our family members, we like to start with our friends. And what ends up happening is, even though we've gone into it, from a beautiful place in our heart, we've had an experience. We've had an opening, we've had an awakening, we've had an awareness. We want to share it with them. We want them to also have it. The tragedy is that you cannot give that experience to another person. And typically when they are your family members, what they take that as is you trying to change them. And most of the time it actually ends up leading more to conflict rather than our loved ones saying, wow, thank you so much for shining light on all the ways that I'm stuck. Thank you so much for shining light on all the ways that I'm living in ignorance. Thank you so much for showing me where that was really just my ego. Very few people react like that. Most of the time what we get is, shut up. Don't tell me what to do. You are the problem. I was not stressed until you walked into the room. I'm very calm. If you don't tell me to calm down, I'm very calm. If you have a problem with how I am, fix it. So we get all sorts of varieties of what we'll call non-effective responses. Hasn't helped us, hasn't helped the person. But what we don't recognize is the incredible power of just being in our truth. It's very powerful. And slowly, slowly, because we do emanate that, it impacts people. It changes them. People around us feel differently. We may not always get the credit for it. That's okay. We have to give up our attachment to them knowing that it was us who changed them. Because they may just think that they started feeling differently. They may attribute it to something else. And we have to allow that to be okay. But there's one more piece, which is, in addition to raising our own consciousness, we also are global citizens. And when things are going on in our communities, in our countries, in our world, that we know are not right, we actually have a responsibility to respond. That responsibility is because we're a member of a global family. If a member of your family were in trouble, whether they became a drug addict or an alcoholic and you had to organize, a family intervention, whether they became very sick and required medical treatment, maybe the family had to make financial sacrifices to get it, whatever. Break a leg, have to be moved from the upstairs bedroom to the downstairs bedroom, so we all readjust. Okay. We respond. We don't just ignore it and pretend it's not happening and just meditate in our own room. Yes, we keep meditating in our room as well. It makes us much better able to deal with that, which is going on in the family. But we also act. And that is true in our world. We have to respond. Each of us in different ways. There's no cookie cutter response. Thou shalt act in this way. Thou shalt spend 15 minutes every day doing this or that. Each of us has different abilities. We have different skills. We have different connections. We have different opportunities. We have different areas of influence. But being spiritual does not mean I cut myself off from the world. Spirituality is not an either or. It's an and. It's a yes and yes. The beautiful metaphor that's used so frequently in India is the metaphor of the lotus flower. It sits in the muck, in the dirt. But it stays white and beautiful and miraculously muck-free. And that's really the model. It's not about, oh my God, you're mucking me, I have to go away. But how can I stay here? Stay with my roots in the muck, literally. And yet give my fragrance, give my beauty, give my own nutrients back into this muck. Whether it's through photosynthesis, whatever I'm doing, I'm actually able to channel assistance, nourishment, nourishing back into the muck. But I have no attachment that it's going to stop being muck. I just know that this is my role. And it's a really beautiful metaphor to think about. It's not I get drowned. It's not I stop being white. It's not I lose my fragrance. But it's this beautiful, just visual to hold. And for most of us, it's a pendulum swing. For most of us, we go from being fully in the muck to being a few feet above the muck. Roots not quite grounded. And then we swing back to reground ourselves. Then we find ourselves a little bit mucky. Then we shift back and it becomes kind of a pendulum swing. But you slowly, slowly, slowly find ourselves getting closer to that center where we're able to actually do both. And so we maintain our consciousness and we respond. Because if we turn our backs, really what that's saying is the people who are making the decisions in our country are the non-meditators, are the non-yogis. If all the yogis say, well, forget it, I don't want to have anything to do with politics, it's not a spiritual thing. Politics and spirituality, politics and yoga, politics and meditation don't mix. Then what we've done is we've just created a world in which we say, well, everybody who has the power to therefore make a decision about our world, by definition has to be a non-meditator, non-yogi, non-spiritual person, which is a really scary thought. But we have to begin with ourselves and realize that if we say, well, I'm a spiritual person, I'm a yogi, I'm a meditator, I'm only going to work on my consciousness, then we're setting up a model that says those sitting in power will be those who are not working on their consciousness. And our world needs people who are expanding their consciousness to also make decisions for the world. So we do both.